Hello everyone, and welcome back to Unreal Engine 5 for Pavlov Modding. There's a couple of announcements that I wanted to make before we jump into this tutorial video. One of the big things is that currently on my GitHub, which is linked below, I do have all of the assets that are going to be a part of these tutorial videos, as well as prior maps that I've made in the past, uploaded here for you to go ahead and download and use as you please. Now, these include custom skins. This includes my Killer Clown GameLogic and map, as well as the new debug map, which is where all of these tutorial videos are taking place at. I am giving these over to the community for no charges whatsoever, for the sole purpose that as I move out of UE5 and Pavlov development for this YouTube channel, I want to make sure that you all have the ability to download these and use these as you please. They're all the 3D models, textures, whatnot. They're the scripts, all that jazz. Use it as you want. I would prefer that these get used than get lost. These will include all of my custom items, from all of my custom guns, as well as my custom knives, to all of the custom hands that you want to use if you want to go for it, custom skins, blueprints such as the item spawners, the jumps, skin boxes, chicken spawners, all that fun stuff. This will also include the U maps, so if you want to check out how maps like the Killer Clown were made, you can absolutely download this, take a look at the U map, and modify it and use it as you will. I have no problem if you want to go ahead and upload this and make it a map in general. I want these to be usable for everyone. Sweet! Let's jump back into Unreal Engine and check out the tutorial for GameLogic. One of the requests that I got was creating a basic GameLogic, and we'll take it even a step further and we'll go ahead and try out a couple examples of different types of GameLogics. When you are creating a GameLogic for a custom map, you have two options. You can either make the GameLogic a custom one, or you can make the GameLogic follow standard ones like Team Deathmatch, Search and Destroy, all that fun jazz. Most mods that I've seen are a custom game mode. So if we have our definition file, for example, and we open this up, you'll notice that down here at the bottom, we have this option to do compatibility and custom game modes. So with compatibility, this is where all your game modes come into play, and this is where you can tag whether your map or mod essentially is compatible with these different types of game modes. Most of the time in all of these tutorials, I've always had custom checked, as well as the custom game mode box here checked. And when you have these checked, that means that you need to create your own GameLogic. And that's what we have here, the GL debug test map, for example. We're gonna go ahead and start fresh. So what we're gonna do is we're going to right click in our UGC folder. We're gonna do a new blueprint class. We're gonna do GL, which is GameLogic. And we're gonna do the Pavlov GameLogic parent class. And we're going to create a new one. We're just gonna call this one GL. I'm gonna call this tutorial video. Once you have it in here, go ahead and double click and you'll be brought to a screen like this. This is your GameLogic. It's gonna look like this little dinosaur. And we're gonna go right into the event graph. And this is what you're gonna get. You're gonna have a begin play and event tick. And you'll notice over here on the right, you'll have your definition, global info, and player proxy class. Now, we've created these in different videos before, but you're gonna wanna make sure that when you pull this out into your map, you drag into this, otherwise your map is not going to upload correctly. So for example, we have our definition here. You would wanna make sure you drag your definition into there. You would also wanna drag your player proxies, your infos, your player infos, all that jazz. Now, since we already have a GameLogic in here, debug test map, for example, you'll notice that all of mine are already pre-filled in here. We'll go back into our viewer, which I'm not sure why mine did this. And the first thing you're gonna wanna do when you have custom game modes is you always need to initialize the game mode. So we need to create an event. If you don't know the event off the top of your head, what's nice is that you can go to these overrides here and you can just look at this list here. And the first thing we need to do is on custom game mode init, or if you don't want to go through this list, you can just right click and do on custom game mode init. Either way you do it, it will create this red box. So I'll show you both ways. That was the way with the right click and type, or you could do it through the function override and it'll do the same thing. It'll just create this. So you need to first initialize your game. The first thing I usually do is I always add a little bit of delay just right after. It's never a bad idea. And the next thing we're going to want to do is that when you create a custom game mode, you need to set certain parameters of the game mode. So we'll do set game, and then here under the Pavlov API, we have game mode properties. All right. And you'll have this. This is a server-side logic block. And we need to create properties. So we'll drag off of this dark blue, and then there will be this option to make Pavlov game mode properties. If you don't see this, make sure that your context sensitive is clicked. If it's not, you'll have everything here. But if you don't have context sensitive here, then you could just type it in, of course. I usually just situate it right underneath. And then you can click this little arrow here, and then you've got all these options that you want to choose. If you want your game to essentially be a no teams like game, you'll check this box. If you want there to be scoring, you'll check this box. If you want no scoring, you'll check this box. Auto respawn, which this one is very important if you just want to have players respawn automatically on death. And if you are trying to do a game mode where essentially you are doing a last man standing kind of thing, which was one of the requests, you actually want to keep this off, and you want things to be dictated by round states, which we'll talk about here in a second. Keep bodies, this is just a cleanup thing. I never really like to keep bodies just for the sake that it does eat up performance and it's kind of messy. And then spawn ghost on login is just exactly as it sounds. Instead of players coming into the server and then they immediately become a player, they just spawn in as spectators essentially. That's usually what ghost stands for. And that's really important for things that you don't want people to spawn in and then immediately start playing if a round is already going, for example. So now we have our custom mode initialized. But the thing is that there's more to just initializing the game mode. We have to tell the server to spawn players, to do all this stuff. So the way that we do that is we do it through round states. So what we're gonna do is after we set the game mode, I like to add just a little bit of delay. Again, never a bad idea. And then I do round state. I will do a set round state. And I always do starting, just kind of by default. Whenever I create a game, I immediately go into the starting. So how is this dictated? How are round states handled? Well, very similar to how we have events for game mode initialization or begin play, we also have events that handle round states. So we can go back to the override and we can look around here, and there it is, on round state changed. That is called whenever we have a block like this. So now that the round state has been changed, we are now going to go down this path. So what can we do from here? Well, there's a couple of things. We have two output nodes that come from this round state changed. We have an old state and we have a new state. So the new state is what's going to come out from the call that we made here. We just told it we want to go to the starting round. So that's what's going to output from here. The old state is what the state was before, which in our case was actually just initialization. I actually don't know what it is before. I assume it's null because it technically wasn't any of these by default at the start. So I don't know what it outputs to, but we know that what the new state is, and you don't have to use these. But since we know what the new state is, we know that it's starting, how do we handle this? How do we tell the game what we want to do? Well, the easiest way that we can do this is by using a switch statement. So I will pull this and I will do a switch on Pavlov round state. And that will go to this block here, this yellow block. And you'll notice that it's got all the different states for Pavlov's round states: starting, standby, started, and ended. So now that we've called the logic to go to starting, the input is starting. Now we're going to go down this path. So in starting, what do I want the server to do? I'm first going to do a little bit of delay, and then what I want it to do is I want it to do another round state change. In the standby state, this is usually where I do spawn and possess. This is usually where I will spawn in pawns and then have players go through and possess. So I don't mention it here, but what we're actually going to do is we're going to move on to the example for a last man standing kind of gameplay, and we're going to make a wait for players kind of logic. In some of my other custom games, this is where I would implement a player wait loop, for example. And if you're doing a game where you're doing a last man standing thing, you kind of want to wait until you have a certain amount of players before you start, for example. And in this case, we want to make sure that we have at least 2 players in the server before we start. And there are plenty of ways that you could do this, but I think a simplified way would be something like this. So what we want to do is we will create the loop kind of here in the GameLogic. It's going to be a little messy, a little hard to follow, but bear with me for a second. So what we're going to do is we're going to do a branch, and our condition is going to be based on greater or equal. We're going to do num players to start. We're going to make this an integer. We're going to pull this out. We're going to do a get. By default, you can have this set to however you want. I'm going to just say 2 for the case, like for this case. And then for the number of players, we're going to do a get game state. And then from the game state, we're going to do get player array. And then from the player array, we're going to do a length. Oh boy, this gets messy very quickly. And then from the amount of players that we have in here, we want to check to make sure that it is greater than or equal to. So we want to make sure that the length A is greater than or equal to B, or the number of players to start. Which, if it's true, then we will do a set round state and we will go to standby. If not, then what we will do is we're going to do a delay. We're going to do about 10 seconds to wait because we don't want to overbear the server. And then we're going to do a set round state to starting so that we redo this loop over and over. And that's kind of a basic way to do a player check, just so that way you don't start servers or start games without the proper amount of players. And you would set this number of players in the map when you pull it out. So for example, when I have it here, now you see in order to start this, I need to have this amount of players to start. So I set it to 2. All right, perfect. So now we have set the round state to standby. Let's say we have 2 players in now. So we have 2 players, we go to standby. Now we need to actually get people to spawn in and play. We're going to do a little bit of delay, and then we're going to use the server command called spawn and possess pawns. And what this does is it's going to take everyone that's a ghost, spawn pawns or player models or whatever you want to call them at the spawn points that you put out on your map, and then it's going to possess them with all the people who are ghosts floating around. Now, we don't want people to necessarily do anything just yet, right? So what we want to do is, actually, even before we do this, we want to set movement disabled. We actually don't want people to move just yet. So we're going to disable their movement. So when they spawn, they're just kind of stuck there. They can look around. They just can't move. They can't walk yet. And we're doing that on purpose. We want to make sure that everyone spawns in is good, they're not stuck or whatever, we're gonna do a little bit of delay, 5 seconds of delay, so that everyone gets kind of recuperated in whatnot. And then we're going to set round state again, and this time we're going to start it. And now in started, we're going to do is then we would do a set. Actually, we'd add a little delay first. Sorry, 0.2 second delay. Set movement disabled. We would not disable it, so we wouldn't check the box. And then la-di-da, that's it. Now we're done. But now you may be asking yourself, well, shoot, how in the world do we ever get to the ended state? How does that work? Well, very similarly to how we have a round state changed event, an initialize a state event or whatever, we also have on killed events, and that's where we're going to head to next. So you see that we have player left server, player killed, player joined server, all that jazz. So we kind of want to handle all of this stuff as we go through. So let's do something. Let's tackle this one part at a time. Let's say in our properties we have everyone who joins in starts off as a ghost. Perfect. So we don't need to handle that stuff now. So when they join, then I guess we don't really need to worry about anything. So we'll just leave that there for now. And if we run into an edge case, then we'll handle it. Now let's say somebody left. Well, shit, people leave all the time. And let's say that that person was the last person on a team that was like the last man standing on another team. Well, shit, we got to handle that now. So let's say somebody left. Now we got to handle this in a different way. So what we're going to do is kind of similarly. So if you can tell, let's just go ahead and iron out what we're going to do here. In this game logic, we're going to do a last man standing game. Let's just go ahead and do that now. So what we need to do is we need to handle the game logic a certain way. We need to have it where 2 teams spawn, only want scoring to happen during the started rounds. We don't want it to be at end and start and started or starting. Teams, we want to make sure that teams are balanced. So this is definitely going to complicate things a little bit more. Okay, so every time a player joins, every other player is going to be on it. Every player that joins is going to be on a different team, and every other player is going to be on the same team. I hope that makes sense. Okay, great. That way, again, we don't mess with our switch round state logic, and that way you stay on the same team that you start off with when you join. And then if you want to handle the way that people do it whenever they leave and rejoin, like that's on you, but this is just a very basic tutorial video, so you handle it however you wish. All right. So now when somebody leaves, we want to double check that there are enough players on both teams that are still playing that it doesn't affect the gameplay. And if there are no players on one team, we want to end the round and then circle back to starting. So that way we have a complete game loop. So let's go ahead and do that real quick. So, okay, holy crap. I made this way more complicated than I absolutely needed to. But follow along, and holy crap, this will be available on the GitHub, I swear. And feel free to change it as needed. But the way we handled players who are both killed and also players who leave the server is actually going to be handled the exact same way, because either way they are being taken out of the game, so it will be handled the same way. So what we're going to do is we actually want to grab the team ID from the player status of either the player who was killed or the player who left the server, and we want to plug it into a branch. Again, I made this way more complicated than I probably needed to. Again, you could probably optimize it. It is also super late, but I record these videos incredibly late just because it's the only free time I have. But I'll try to explain my logic for it. But what I did here was, if it is team 0, I will go down the top branch here, and if it is team 1, I will go down the bottom branch. But they are both the exact same, just with one number difference, 1 or 0. What I do is that when a player gets killed or leaves a server, we want to check what team they're on. If a player leaves or is killed and they're on team 0, we're going to go and we're going to follow this branch up here on the top. We're going to go through the for loop, and we want to get all of the players, and we are just going to go through each element, each player state, and we want to check a couple things. We want to check whether that they are on team 0 and that they are not dead. And this is important because we created 2 extra variables. We created an alive counter for both team 1 and team 0. So when they are not dead and also are on team 0, we go down the true path, which is we increment this variable, which will start at 0. And if at the end of all of this, if this statement, team 0 is equal to 0, then we want to end the round. If it is not equal to 0, then we actually want to set team 0 count back to 0, because otherwise it's going to keep counting up from where it was. And hopefully that makes sense. And we want to actually do the same thing here as well. Otherwise it'll just keep counting up and up and up and up, and we don't want that. We always want it to start at 0 and count up from there. And let's say that this was the last player. Let's say that there were 2 players and one of them already was killed, and then the last player was just killed. So on team 0. So we now go through all the players. We just went through every player state, and we found that this statement here never went through. So team 0 alive count has always been 0. It never did anything. So we just completed the branch. We just found out that team 0 alive count was set to 0. So now it's true. Now we've ended the round because one team is completely out of players to play. So now what? Now that one team is completely out of players, we want to end the round. So what we're going to do is we're going to kill all of the alive players, and we can actually go ahead and create a function for this because we're starting to really run through a bunch of stuff. In fact, we probably could have created a function for a lot of this stuff. Event, we're going to call this one reset players. Okay, and what we're going to do is we're going to do a for each loop. And the array, we're going to do a get game state, get players, player array. All right, we're going to go ahead and throw this in, and then we're going to, for each array element in the loop body, to get Pavlov player status. This will be in the loop body. Pavlov player status, we'll go ahead and break this down. And then from the player state, we're going to apply dabblage. Well, actually, we're going to do a couple things. One thing we're going to do is we're actually going to go into a branch statement, and we're going to do a not boolean because we don't want to apply damage to people who are already dead. There's no reason to. And we want to do a branch. So basically, if they are not dead, then we will apply damage. If they're already dead, there's no reason to do it. So if not dead for every player, apply an absolute crap ton of damage and they will die. And we'll say knife damage. Why not? Cool. Ended. We'll go ahead and say reset players. So that way we don't have to have all of that there. And we'll go ahead and add a little delay. We'll do about a 5-second delay. And then we will go to set round state and we will do starting. And there we go. Holy cow, that took way longer than it had any right to. Good God. And now we have our fully completed loop of a custom game for doing a last man standing type of game. That was a lot more complicated than it absolutely needed to be. But I just wanted to go forth and do something a little more unique. It does incorporate a couple of things like waiting for players, which again, this very easily could have been in a function as well. And then all of this like team alive count stuff could have also been in a function, but I just wanted to build it all out for you all just so you can kind of see it. Same with the reset players, which we did end up doing. but this kind of gives you an idea of how custom game logics are handled. In the end, a custom game logic needs to have two basic things. It needs to be initialized and it needs to have round state handling. That's really it. The extra stuff for like waiting for players and then resetting rounds and all this stuff, that was really extra. You only need to be able to have spawn and possess pawns and setting the round state to started. We just went the extra mile and did something a little more extreme, but this is definitely fun stuff. I would highly recommend checking this out and then downloading the GitHub, which is where I will throw this tutorial video, GameLogic. It will be under the new debug map folder in GitHub. I will link the GitHub down below in the description, but please check it out. It is definitely totally worth it. But I hope you all enjoyed this video. I have mentioned this before, but I will be slowly moving away from these tutorial videos, not just because I want to continue pursuing more of the let's play and horror gaming aspect stuff, but because I am slowly running out of ideas for tutorial videos. And like, I'm not an Unreal master by any means, if you couldn't tell by this absolute spaghettified mess, but I do still want to be able to share as much as I can. So I did provide the GitHub as a bit of resource to make this modding community alive again and very valuable, because it does mean a lot, because this game is definitely not, in my opinion, this game is just not where it used to be. And I do feel that it could be so much better if people had the knowledge and know how to do this stuff. So with that being said, I hope you all enjoyed this video. Thank you all for watching, and this has been MaJerati, and I will see you all in the next one.